dead.
Good point.
Well, he wants to make them dead. Well, actually, I think it's because there's 3 escalation X's down in the lower southwest that are probably all bone dancers, and you need to clear out all 3 source X's.
I think it might be because of the ruin Texas increasing the output of infection.
Say which now?
There's ruin hexes that increase the output of infection once they become infected themselves.
By the way, I want to announce in here that next week the guest on this thing is going to be Mark Helms, CTO at Goblin Works. He's the guy in charge of everything, so you can ask him anything you want.
Great. Steal my thunder, Lisa, but I appreciate it. Yeah, so for those of you that haven't caught, Lisa has been working really hard to help the university get somebody every week. So I never know what it's going to be until Lisa springs it on me, which is fun.
Also, well, hi everybody here. We're going to be running an event on the 11th of April, COTP. And we're going to ask everybody to join us. I'll have some more information about it later. But if you have time, April 11th, pretty much a couple hours in the afternoon, we're going to be running a really cool event. Take some pictures and do escalations.
Also, if anyone's bored, Og is back in his home hex. Have fun. And I know that's technically not his home hex, he just lives there.
Another T2.
And while we have a lot of people idling, do we have any specific plans for Pathfinder Online at PaizoCon yet?
Good question. I actually have a list of events that I'm finalizing, and I'll get Ryan to sign off on it tomorrow, and then maybe I'll see if we can get a blog up this week. But yeah, so actually, a quick question, since there's a lot of the regulars in here, and how many people in here are planning to go to PaizoCon?
I would love to, but I can't make it.
So I count 1.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to make it either. This is Naiman. I would love to, but it's just not in the cards.
Yeah, the reason I was asking is because we were thinking about doing something with trying to get a player council put together, but we want to make sure there's a good representation of the different settlements if we're going to do that.
We could always do it via Mumble.
Yeah, I know, but we thought it'd be fun to do it in person.
That would, and you're killing me.
I should do a PaizoCon in North Carolina.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of Pathfinder Online people in North Carolina.
Well, there's a lot of Paizo fans in general. Have one in Raleigh-Durham, you'll have 3,000 people show up.
Is that a promise, Cheadle? Even if they don't, you're going to pay for however many less than 30,000 don't show up?
If I win the lottery, yeah.
Hey, you give me that lottery promise lot.
See? There's number 1.
There's at
Only
least
20.
30 people in the Triangle area in North Carolina that would show up.
Or you could just go to Origins and I'd be right there.
Or Gen Con.
Gen Con, we're all there. At least I am.
I will be there, but I'm interested to see if it continues in Indianapolis.
Yeah, because of all that crap that's going on. Well, let's see if the governor backs down.
You could go to Dragon Con, I believe it's called, in Georgia.
I went to the first Dragon Con back in 1988, I think it was.
Awesome. Hey, Pino, you'd go to that one, wouldn't you?
Alright, Steven, you back?
I am here.
Alright, so we'll get started. So for those of you that don't know, this is a Pathfinder University Keepside chat. We're trying to hold these every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. And I don't care if it's daylight or whatever savings time because I get confused. For those of you looking for a list of our classes, they're at classes.pathfinderuniversity.com, and you can find out more about the university at pathfinderuniversity.com. So, Stephen, mind introducing yourself?
I'm Steven. I post on the forums. You have all seen me post on the forums.
What do you do for Gobworks?
I am the combat and crafting designer, amongst other system needs.
So, anything about how we build our characters is a good question for you?
Unless it's about how much XP stuff costs, in which case it's a question for Lee.
Why does he get to pick how much XP it costs?
It's good to be the king.
All right. So we got a bunch of questions, and if anyone has additional questions, you can add them in. But, Stephen, of course, everybody wants to know some more about holdings and building holdings and outposts and all that. Got any quick thoughts to start?
That I can try to answer those questions, but those were questions you should have asked Torque last week.
We asked Torque about the settlement stuff, but how about actually crafting them? Is that under you?
Oh, yes. Crafting kits.
All right, talk to us about how we build a holding.
The same way you build anything else. You get materials, you throw it in the hopper, you let it go.
Yeah, but I mean, how much materials? It said, we're going to need pine and ingots, and I think it was hemp, basic strips. I mean, a lot of resources. What are we looking for?
They are priced currently about the same cost as a tier 2 weapon. The outposts are towards the low end of the weapons, so like a dwarven longsword, whereas a holding is priced more similarly to the silvered steel longswords.
And about the same crafting times?
Yep. The dirty secret is that crafting time and price in my spreadsheet are very, very closely related.
Now, is that going to be released anytime soon? Because I know we've asked about that.
What's that?
The actual recipes and the list on the on your sheets for the holdings.
That will go up when we put the patch notes up for 7.
All right, so let's talk about Seneschal, because there's kind of this thing about making these trophy things. What's the deal on those?
So bosses starting with 7 will drop victory markers. The same way now they automatically drop an expendable. Bob is setting up to automatically drop at least 1 victory marker. The more difficult escalations have more victory markers they drop. So everybody in the party should get one. At least one. This is the same way that the expendables work. So we basically set it up so you need 6 victory markers at a minimum to start crafting a holder's deed, and the more you have, the higher plus you can make the holder's deed, or the more of them you can make. I think he set it up so the top end, they drop 3. So a party of 6 will get 18 of them a lot of the time, which will allow you to make 3 plus 0 holder's deeds, or 1.5 plus 5 holders, or plus 3 holders deeds, with the chance of getting up to plus 4 or plus 5.
And do we need anything else, any other materials to go along with those to make the holders deeds?
Hold on, I am finding that spreadsheet.
You could have guessed that. We'd have to ask some questions about those things.
Yeah, sorry, I was mostly gone for 10 minutes because I was trying to figure out how to open things on this computer in here. BBPO, it was hidden. No, holders' deeds are all victory markers.
Great. And the Seneschal, right now, the only way to progress him is with social points, which is by killing other players. Any thoughts on expanding how
the achievements for raising Seneschal will give you social points.
So wait, so actually crafting is going to give you social points, essentially?
Yep.
So it shouldn't be too hard to progress, that's what you're saying.
Now, I think Lee has set it up so you can get 2 Seneschal 10 just crafting the holders' deeds. Or the holders' patents, rather, sorry. And you don't need more than 4 or 5, except for increased crafting speed for the time being. And I'm sure once we add more stuff that Seneschal will do, it'll have more options for raising social points.
So making a high-level seneschal is not really a high value right now.
The one thing it does right now is the crafting skill for holders patents, and then it'll it'll once we get the management system online, it will reduce your upkeep cost in some way for holdings. But that's not my area.
Okay. The other one, and this may not be your area either, but I was looking. There's no armor feat that matches seneschal.
I don't follow.
So there's no like freeholder or expert or anything that gives you a bonus to seneschal.
No, that is correct. It is going to be the skill of the aristocrat, which has not been introduced yet.
Any idea when the aristocrat's coming? Because I've had a lot of questions in all these about the Fey rolls and what's happening with that.
So aristocrat is basically waiting on more of the big combat systems. I don't think we're going to concentrate too hard on it until we're getting a lot closer to formations. And we've only got holder and expert, freeholder and expert, like about 30% implemented at this point. So aristocrat may be a ways off.
So it's not on the board, is what I've heard people say.
It is not full. It's not roughed out in any significant detail now.
All right. Hold on one second. I just got to stop my question. So, any other kind of info on kind of how much resources we're going to need for kind of a hold? You said just like a weapon, but that we should just follow as a guideline.
Well, I just give you the numbers.
That'd be great. We'd love that.
Incidentally, backspace is the worst push to talk key when I'm trying to move around a spreadsheet.
Yep. While you're looking, the other thing, just to confirm, we saw the original note said level 8 and 10 to make the holdings. Is that kind of sticking true for engineer?
Okay, so sorry about that. This spreadsheet is hard to navigate on a laptop. Anyway, so the outposts are level 8. They for the basic ones, they require 5 pine halves, 5 steel ingots, 5 hemp ropes, and I think 24 basic strips along. Ten basic strips. Meanwhile, the holdings are actually level 7 for the basic ones, because you have to build those first. And those require 13 pine halves, 13 steel ingots, 11 hemp ropes, and the holder's patent. Meanwhile, the rarer kits require the same amount of materials, but they require rank 9 for the central whatever holdings, and rank 10 for the other outposts.
And it sounded like the 9 and 11, those we're going to need a recipe drop.
So actually, yeah, so 11 doesn't have anything at this point. That was specifically set up, like I moved them down a rank, so the achievements would be useful to you.
But the recipes for the holdings and the outposts are common, and the other ones will be uncommon.
Oh yeah. So the 9 and 10 ones require a recipe drop, whereas the 7 and 8 ones are default.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that information. All right. Any other questions from the group on holdings before we go to the next topic? Oh yeah. How about the pluses? How does that work? If we get a +3 building, is it building? First of all, is the average just like everything else? And what does that help?
They work exactly like getting pluses for everything else. We'll have to get back to you on exactly what it does because we're still cycling on the value of plussing up. There's been some internal debate on exactly what it does.
Okay.
It'll be good.
It'll be worth the pluses, what you're trying to say?
We hope so.
Great. And once the building's in place, is there any way to upgrade the plus, or is it just once it's there, you're done?
That is part of the whole debate, but we are hoping so.
You're hoping to have a way.
Yep, it comes down to UI and tech.
All right. While we're talking about my favorite type of crafter, the engineer, what's up with base camps? I mean, the camps as a whole, the simple camps and all that, nobody's really using because the numbers really just don't work out to help. What are your thoughts?
That people that paid real money got a real benefit, and that's the way it worked out.
That's for the crafted ones, the simple camp, the royal, the traditional, all those people aren't really using because the numbers really just don't work out.
The numbers were designed to scale to the top end. The amount of power you get back is your full bar. So it had to have room to scale.
Okay. All right. So next, some people have some questions about expendables. Is that in your area?
It is.
So there's been a lot of debate on whether or not those are set right. There's kind of the question on should the buffs take longer to cast, last longer. What's your reaction to kind of the current state of expendables?
I'm still awaiting lots and lots of feedback on that forum thread. I would love to hear everybody's impressions of whether they are too long, too short, too good, too bad, how you feel about them.
So how do you pick kind of which forum threads to watch and which ones you're waiting for answers on? I mean, there's a lot of opinions, let's say, on the forums. How do you choose what to listen to?
Well, I started a thread to talk about expendables, and there's maybe about a dozen people that have posted, so I would love to hear more people and not just the same voices arguing the same points. Like, everybody who has access to the forums, I would love to hear your feedback.
So you're looking for more variety, more people, more opinions?
Absolutely. The one thing that we've learned from MMO design is that you don't want to let the forums turn into an echo chamber where a few loud voices are the only ones that are being heard. So the more people that can post, the more we'll feel like this is a representative sampling of what players think.
So how do you know when you get to that kind of critical mass? I mean, that sounds like a rough thing to find a balance.
It is a rough thing.
But what's your guideline? I mean, how do you get that?
So largely it comes down to weight of opinion, the point where it sounds like enough people have voiced their opinion that it sounds like representative sampling, and then who has had the good arguments about why things should be one way or the other.
Okay. So while we're kind of talking about expendables, I got a bunch of different questions about the combat system. Kind of, when are we going to get better target systems and some of the other things? What are you thinking?
Hopefully, Cole is working on targeting right now. We're hoping for some big improvement for E7.
Okay. How about ammo?
Ammo still remains soon, but not firmly scheduled yet.
I sure hope we're going to get a warning for that one.
You will certainly get a warning.
So the channel smite, is that going to be non-alignment based, or how's that going to work?
Those are not intended to be alignment based. That is correct. They are the cleric feature. I would probably love to set it up so you get negative if you're evil and holy if you're good, but it was most straightforward to make it all holy for the time being.
All right. And with the combat fixes, is this going to be one of those things that helps with not being able to attack people as they move, or any plans for that?
We are constantly trying to iterate on that. It's just, server timing and movement and all of that is an optimization question that I can't give any firm timelines on, but we're aware of it and we are trying to make it as better as possible.
All right. Sorry, I'm bouncing around a little bit because questions are coming in all over the place. So, how about you mentioned quickly about the expert and the freeholder not being completely fleshed out. When should we expect that? I mean, what should we expect? What's coming?
So the main thing we're waiting on for those is the tech for their role features was intended to interface with the crafting system and basically give you an additional queue, do some other things that manipulate how you interact with refining and crafting in a lot of ways. And we have not yet scheduled the tech for doing that. So we're reticent to put in versions of those features that don't have any bonus on them other than their keywords. However, the holdout weapon and the toolkit have a robust set of expendables that are ready to go as soon as those features are in.
So, what are the sorry, Joe? What are the toolkits and the holdout weapons, and what are those going to do?
So the toolkit is the expert's implement, and it is similar to a rogue kit in some ways and has a lot of overlap with the rogue kit, but ultimately it will be more, will have expendables designed to interface with base defenses and siege weapons, and those are not going to be online immediately, but it also has a lot of utility powers that are little tricks like throwing acid on people or buffs to yourself that have the theme of things that you could figure out as an expert. And then meanwhile, the freeholder carries around the holdout weapon, which is a nasty little blade/stabbing implement that you can whip out when least expected from your boot or your back and totally shank somebody that was not expecting you to pull a knife while you were gathering. And they have a bunch of very nasty little surprise attacks.
Oh, that sounds like that's a lot more than I expected to come out of those classes. And he just moved away.
Be out adventuring. You're never going to be as powerful as an adventuring class when you're adventuring, but we want you to be able to hold your own. And that's why some of the gates for raising craft skills seem a little bit onerous right now, is you're intended to round them out with skills and abilities that maybe don't make you competitive in a straight-up PvP environment, but give you some ability to contribute to a PvE fight or to get out of get out of a PvP battle in a way that people wouldn't necessarily expect because you have a big old knife in your boot.
So you're not really expecting people to pull out just pure crafters. You're saying we really have to do that diversity, and that's the way you want to go?
The point, like, pure crafters, even pure crafters have a little bit of cool things they can do that are thematic. Like, so for example, one of the things I would love to get the tech for the expert to be able to do is one of their features is supposed to provide an aura, so anybody that has weapons that you've crafted or have been recently crafted, depending on what level of tech we get, they're better. So you provide a bonus just being able to maintain their equipment for them for the entire party.
So that's going to have to go with like some type of a maker's mark or something?
Exactly. So one of the things we'd like to get for the crafting system that, again, this isn't scheduled, but it's probably not that difficult to do, is to get, at the very least, a way to tell whether something has just been crafted or whether it's been sold to the auction house and therefore is not recently crafted, or whether it's been possibly even stolen. So that's another level down. And that way we track basically either something you crafted for yourself or something you crafted and immediately handed to somebody else versus something that has been in the system for a while. And ideally, we'd also tag the actual crafter that crafted it on there, but that might be more database than we're ready to assign to it.
So you're intending essentially to have different, I don't know, plus is not that word, but just some different features depending on whether it's newly crafted, something you made yourself or not?
Exactly.
That sounds kind of cool. All right, so to continue on crafting, there was a lot of debate there on Tier 2 crafting times. Saw one message saying we're cutting it, and then not so much. Let's talk about it.
So the detail of that is the crafting times were, from my point of view, way longer than I actually expected them to be. Tier 2 stuff and Tier 3 stuff should have been longer than Tier 1 stuff, but not nearly as longer as it is right now. And it was very surprising to me to hear players like them that long. And it's hard to tell exactly where the issue is. I worry that there may be people that are not part of these big companies that I'm not hearing from that would like the crafting times to be shorter so they can actually get more of it done. I'm not sure having longer crafting times to give more people more stuff to queue stuff up is going to be healthy in the long run. We're willing to wait and see how people are using it. Ultimately, it's just we had originally envisioned the system as fewer crafters supporting more adventurers, and it seems like it's a lot closer to 1-to-1 than we expected. And so we're cycling internally on whether that's a good thing, whether that's a bad thing. I worry that one of the goals for the crafting system was that people did not feel like they needed a 1-to-1 adventurer to crafter ratio. Like in normal MMOs, crafting is just a sideline you do to support yourself. And therefore, the Destiny's twin in our game wound up being just the crafting thing you need to support yourself. And I think that's possibly dangerous for the long run, that people will feel like they have to get an alt, be able to craft the things they need. And so we do need to move it to fewer crafters can support more adventurers, but we'll see how it goes.
So the Destiny's twin kind of changed your plans, huh?
Not so much that the Destiny's twin changed the plans, it's that the Destiny's twin wound up being used in a way that I didn't totally foresee, insofar as providing everybody the ability to both adventure and craft. I thought more people would use the Destiny's twin for a different type of adventuring.
That's surprising, because it seemed to be that the community pretty quickly said, all right, I got one crafter, one adventurer.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I do not want to create an instantiated Destiny's twin class where everybody else that comes into the game later feels that they have to pay for a second account because the game has been tuned, so you need a Destiny's twin or a second account to compete.
That makes sense. And there was some discussion about, it seemed like the community was behind, tier 3 not being 100 times tier 1. What is your thoughts there?
Yeah, so that's the other thing, is that we have a 24-hour crafting queue that was meant to be set up so you would actually be able to put multiple things into it. If everything winds up taking more than 24 hours, there's not much point of a 24-hour queue. It's just now we have a queue that can fit one thing. Why is it 24 hours?
Have you thought at all about extending that 24-hour to 48 or 72 or something?
That might be a way to go if we decide that we like longer crafting times.
So how are you going to make that decision? I mean, that's probably one of the hotter threads we had in quite a while. All of a sudden it was like, oh, we're going to drop it.
It's not all of a sudden it was all of a sudden we're going to drop it, not just because we viewed it as a small bug fix. We were admittedly unprepared for how strong people's feelings were, and so we listened to that and we decided to push back the change to when we could consider it more in light of what the community thinks about it. It was a surprise to us just how impassioned people were at crafting times being reduced being a problem. So we stepped back and we pulled it out of the patch for the time being so we could get a better view on it.
How about some of these debates around durability and, threading and some of the other things?
So durability was an arbitrary figure that seemed long enough that if you're dying a bunch, you're going to have your gear for a little while, but short enough that you actually would need to get more gear if you're dying a lot. People are not dying yet as often as we thought they would. So rather than reduce the durability, I think one of the goals right now is just to get you guys to kill each other more often.
Well, that's not exactly nice.
The River Kingdoms are not exactly a nice place.
So you're going to start trying to up the PvP so that we go through our gear more?
Exactly. So we have two things going on right now. We have very little PvP going on compared to what we thought there would be. Point two. My mind just went blank, staring out the window. Hold on. Oh, yeah, and threading. And threading is not all the way in yet, so you're actually able to protect way more gear than you'll ultimately be able to at the higher tiers. Once we get more PvP in, we'll see. Once we get threading in, we'll see again. One of the issues with changing durability up and down willy-nilly is it's attached to the item once it's crafted, so you can't really easily shift the number up and down and have it retroactively affect everything that's already been crafted. So I'm loath to move it up and down just to test it out, because then you'll have a whole bunch of stuff with different numbers attached to them that are floating around the economy.
So Gerzak put a post that was kind of interesting about people wearing the stuff so they don't lose it. even though it doesn't fit their feet. What are your thoughts on that?
So, as commented on that thread, the intention was always that you could wear stuff that is much higher tier than you are and just treat it as lower tier. So, if it's working the way I think it is, you can't actually slot heavy armor as a wizard unless you have at least the tier 1 armor feat. Unfortunately, that tier 1 armor feat is really cheap to buy if you're already tier 2. As pointed out in that thread, though, when you're doing that, you will have very reduced defenses. And so, yeah, you're getting your Masterwork keyword match to get more of whatever you're getting, but on the other hand, you're 50 or possibly more points lower defenses than you would be. So it may be kind of a wash. It's hard to tell whether that's really effective, especially since we're hoping to get spell penalty in sooner rather than later.
So is the threading coming soon, or is that kind of a long term?
Soonish, not scheduled, but hopefully not too far out.
Any thoughts about? I know there's some debate in the PvP side of having people be able to, rip off your armor essentially and take it from you.
So I mean that's just the debate that has gone on in the game forums since Ryan first started talking about it. There's the trade-off between full loot and keeping enough stuff to be viable when you respawn, and so we can continue to have this debate back and forth as to how much looting is acceptable and how many threads protecting stuff should cost. It's just his original promise was 1 suit of armor and 1 weapon, and then we modified that to or an equivalent amount of stuff if you don't want to have 1 suit of armor and 1 weapon, and more at lower tier when you're still learning the way. And we'll see how that shakes out.
So any big surprises for you from us? I mean, what's the biggest thing we did that surprised you?
Yeah, got really mad that I buffed graphic dice.
That's fair. Have you? Now is Gathering also under you? Just to be clear.
Gathering is sort of mostly lead, but I have some hand in it.
What about the debate about tier 1? Is that given out of tier 1 when you get to tier 2? And some of those debates.
Right. So that is a system that the way we implemented it to keep you from getting nothing when you're only tier 1 perhaps creates a weird disincentive to raise the skill. And what I would love to have happen is actually everything past tier 1 is actually bonus, so you're not actually getting less as you go up in tier. And it's just a weird artifact of the way the system was set up, and I think we'll probably wind up changing it eventually, but it's not that big of a deal right now, unless people are really, really angry about losing their tier 1 stuff. Theoretically, the tier 2 stuff you're getting is 5 times as valuable.
Well, but I mean, I know a lot of people that are keeping their characters right at 6 just because they don't want to cross over to that tier 2 and lose the tier 1 stuff.
Right, yeah, I know people are doing it. I'm just wondering if that is an artifact of there's not as much tier 2 stuff being made right now, so players have not yet really noticed that the value of the stuff they're getting when they can harvest tier 2 should be more than the stuff they're getting when they're harvesting tier 1.
Well, I mean, I think what's end up happening is because all the tier 2 stuff takes tier 1 resources, I mean, even just basic stuff, coal and wood and things like that, whether people as you or pine, depending on where you live, I mean, that's become a huge thing.
Agreed. And so the ideal way to deal with it would be, in fact, that going up a tier is always a bonus and doesn't actually just move the needle to now some of what you're getting is tier 2 instead of 1. And I just don't know when we'd be able to make that change.
So it seems to, why do you say 5 times more for tier 2? I mean, where's that number come from?
So the valuation, everything that we've done for the rarity of items and the value of items says that tier 2 is 5 times as valuable as tier 1, tier 3 is 250 times as valuable as tier 1. And those are the numbers that we use in all of the spreadsheets to basically assign values to things and assign rarity to things.
So, and that's just a general rule? It's not necessarily specific by which item?
Yeah, that is general across everything from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3.
It seems to be in the actual crafting community. I mean, there's there's some tier 1 items that are worth a whole lot more than tier 2 as far as materials, just because some of the tier 2 things really aren't used.
And so ultimately, that's why we'd like to get first the auction house actually having a history on it. Because one of the first things I want to do is start seeing what people are actually willing to pay for things and realigning the values based on that, at which point that will. It's a whole circle that will probably require several trips around to nail things down to real appropriate values. But to start with, all of our seeded numbers were completely arbitrary. Like Lee and I made our best guesses on how often people would die, how often people would want to use one thing versus another. And so the more we get real data, the more we can start refining those numbers. So if we say this thing is worth 500 and this other thing is worth 500, that has real meaning all the way down to the resources involved. And we'll have to go around several times because once we change the recipes, then that will change what people need for those recipes and around and around and around, but we should be able to eventually hit the target. And so you should expect to see the recipes beginning to change once we get more and more real data.
I was going to ask you about that. You just threw a bomb there that recipes might change.
We're unfortunately not perfect, and our guesses, while informed by as much experience as we have, are not going to be able to figure out what players actually want and value things. So everything in the recipe system is designed around the idea that similar things have similar values, even though they're using dissimilar inputs. And so if we've said this is equivalent to that in cost, but we find that one is 5 times as valuable on the auction house, then we need to change the inputs so they come closer to evening out.
You're trying to say tansy leaves might actually be worth something someday?
I don't know why you don't like my tansy leaves. They are perfect for brewing tea.
But yeah, and that's not really useful. And I say that because I know there's a lot of groups out there stockpiling things because they're expecting here are the recipes, here's what we're going to need. Any concerns about that?
That people are stockpiling things? Maybe. I don't know. We have very little insight into how much people are stockpiling. I assume there is a warehouse full of tansy leaves somewhere that as soon as those stocks become good for things that people want, there will be a glut of those potions on the market. But, we'll have to see when we get there.
How about, people have talked about this kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, but salvaging out of material, acolytes battle focuses, which I have a couple hundred. Any words on that?
I just wrote up the salvaging system today. We will see if we can get it scheduled.
Can you give us a little clue? Because that's an awesome thing.
So the idea is basically that you will throw things into a hopper based on the facility that is required to refine them, and you will throw a bunch of things in there at once. We will total up their value, and we will kick out from a chart based on what went into them, what can come back out of them as a salvage item. It'll be lossy. You won't get nearly as much out as you put in, but it will be a way to get something back out of something that didn't work out for you.
So what do I get for tokens?
The pleasure of knowing that you have a token that can make you think about better fighting skills and reward you for your killing of a monster in a way that does not influence the loot drops as sufficiently.
So I take it there's not going to be a salvage out of tokens?
Tokens are basically inspirations from City of Heroes. They're minor little things that are basically for free, designed to round out the loot tables to give you something interesting to do with consumables. They are not items that have any value assigned to them as far as the crafting system is concerned.
You figure at least turn them back in for essences.
Essences are things that have value assigned to them as far as the crafting system is concerned.
That's interesting. So the tokens are just a literally token. All right.
Yeah, they were literally there so we could give you something rather than lowering the drop rates by a third for salvage items.
That makes sense. So how about the coin market? What do you think's going on in there? I mean, I know, by the way, you have to get information from the auction houses, and we all want buy orders. But what are you thinking about? Is it inflationary? I mean, are we on the right page? What do you think?
So we actually had this debate today, and so we're pretty sure it can't be inflationary because coin and items are coming in at approximately the same rate. So once people start using the auction house with coin, it should probably not be too inflationary. We do definitely need more drains. to convince people to value coin and thus trade for it.
And I know there's been talk about using those for training. Any ideas of kind of what it's going to cost to do training with coin?
I do not know. That would be a lead question. I don't know what he set it at. Ultimately, my feeling is that the more drains we can set up that are scalable to basically not be a fixed value, the better we are. And that way, if there is inflation, it kind of adjusts automatically. But we'll have to burn that bridge as we get to it.
I think the other question around coins is, hey, if they do the training at my settlement, am I going to get a cut?
That is the ultimate goal, yes. I don't know if that'll be in the first iteration of it.
Any ideas of when we're going to start having to pay for our training?
I do not know. I know that I've heard discussions about it. I do not know when it is scheduled to come online.
So, this is about the time I have to ask you some fun questions.
These ones before haven't been the fun questions?
No, those aren't the fun questions. So, Lisa has Yoda. Ryan's a deep sea diver. I mean, we've had all different weird tricks that people do. What's the cool thing you do, and what's your geek cred? Torque is a DJ, so.
I have to justify my geek cred now?
Well, you know, everybody's got something cool.
Do they now?
What you got?
Yeah, not all geeks. Thanks, Tink.
Nothing weird? Come on. Give us something.
I make small ornamental boxes.
Small ornamental boxes? Like what? I mean, like literally the lacquer ones and all those? Or?
Oh, yeah. They're very useful for holding card games and dice.
Very cool. What's it like working at Gobworks?
Compared to?
Compared to what you've done before and kind of, you know, what you're seeing, the dynamics? I mean, any surprises?
No. Like I came here from another smallish company, so I'm used to the startup experience. It is a small company full of geeks. That is why you work in the game industry for a lot of people, is being able to work at a company where you know everybody and everybody likes the same things you do.
All right. I'll go back to our regular questions. People are looking for a blog post on the crafting that Ryan had promised us on the timing.
Yeah, I think somebody's going to write that. I can't remember whether me or Ryan or Lee decided to write that. We will find out.
All right. And from the group, if you have any other questions, I think I've run through the basics. You're welcome to post others. So any of the crafts working differently than you expected? I mean, big time. I mean, I'm just thinking of course, because I'm an engineer, the engineer not really being that useful until holdings was quite the surprise.
Yeah, so there are a few things that the craft system went in. We expected we'd be able to round them out faster than we had, which I'm apologetic for. For example, Jeweler is not as useful as I had hoped because enchanting was delayed somewhat. And some of these things will become more useful later. Engineer will become more useful, or at least easier to level through tier 2 once we get the holdings in. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the craft skills are, we have a vision of where things are going. Some things didn't come in as soon as we had hoped, but we didn't want to just strip out a craft so it was totally empty. I think all of them at least have at this point a progression, so you can get all the way to rank 20, and we'll continue to add more options to them as time goes on. Engineer, in fact, just this last week, 8 architect. We have now removed the idea that we'll introduce an architect skill later, and engineer will just take up whatever slack it was supposed to have.
Gunsmithing?
Yeah, so how about carpenter and stonemason?
So those are still intended to be essentially worker skills for building settlement buildings. It seemed it's too complicated to try to also work them into holdings, which the crafting system is already carrying the load for that, and we didn't want those to be a huge undertaking to get up. But we're still planning on having carpenter and stonemason involved in some way to basically attach to them as workers when a building is going up to speed the rate at which the building can be put up in a settlement.
And there's some questions about kind of, can we get the expert features to be bought so we can do as placeholders and just so we can move our abilities up, even if they don't do anything?
That's always the question we have: is like, would you guys prefer that we put stuff in that is missing some of its feature, just to be able to start raising it, or will people be sad that this thing doesn't seem to do anything? Why are you making me buy it?
I would rather be in. I mean, I'm waiting for the Seneschal to come back just so I can do that. I'd much rather get that in advance and have that built through.
All right, I will convey your ardent wishes to the rest of the team that we should just turn them on. In other news, I did add effects to the remaining features for Wizard and Cleric that didn't actually have an effect, and that should be going on with the EE7 because it was too long waiting for those things. And so now Abjurer, Conjurer, Necromancer, Enchanter, and Charmer Domain should have something with the EE7.
Great. And by the way, it's interesting. The whole group said, "Hey, let's see these, even if we're not going to use them yet."
Yeah. So that's interesting, and I'm gonna write down everybody that said that, and then I don't want to hear any complaints about them not having an effect for a while.
Well, I think it's just kind of an awareness. I mean, if we, if we know that Officer is not going to be used right now, but at least we can start training it. We can use that for gating purposes and other things.
I mean, it's always a question of how many people actually read the forums. And so one of our worries is just we don't want to put too much stuff in game that people that are not totally up on what's going on will feel like they don't know what's going on and they bought something that doesn't seem to do anything. So it's a constant balancing act of providing things for the people that are extremely engaged on the forums and know what's going on without providing something that seems like a trap to people that are not.
Well, that's fair. I mean, when you take out things like, Architect, a whole class disappears.
Was that actually in the game, Bishop Soul, at some point?
I don't know, actually. Ermin put a little post there about that.
Yeah, if it was actually in the game at some point, we will try to figure out a way to fix that. But I don't think we ever actually hooked it up to a trainer.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it looks like he was joking. I think the bigger thing, if a feature is not, not working, can you kind of flag it and say, hey, buy this at your own risk, essentially. Not implement it, put a little NI next to it.
Yeah, so this is just the excitement that is running a game in an early enrollment state, that we have made a commitment not to do respecs and not to take people's progression away. So we don't like to put things in that we're not pretty certain about because we really don't want to take them out.
Right, but I think the example of the freeholder and expert feats that may not work right now, but that could be used would make sense. Because you're going to put it.
I agree. I'd love to add them because I would love to turn on the, if nothing else, to turn on the holdout weapon and toolkit expendables that those feature feats are required to provide the keywords for.
And everybody's kind of looking, and it's been a common question in these about kind of what's the next class and all that. And then we've heard about this polling screen on the startup to decide that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so absolutely when we get that polling feature, I'm sure that will be one of the first things we poll. I don't know where the polling feature is.
Any thoughts on kind of next class or next race?
Well, the next race is obviously known because people already voted for that. I think Art is would like to get some more of the suits out for the existing 3 races before they have to refit them all for gnomes, but that'll come in when it comes in. The next class or the next role rather, is likely to be between Sorcerer, Paladin, which one am I forgetting? Barbarian, and I think that's it. There may be one more that I'm forgetting.
Everybody wants the Bard.
Yeah, Bard I think is actually one of those. Bard, the main thing that I need for that is Aura Tech, which would also be used for some of the cleric features.
So no idea on the gnome, huh? When?
No idea on the gnome. I am not privy to Art's discussions of shrinking down all of the armor sets to make gnome possible.
Yeah, well,
there are probably new animations too. I don't know. There's art magic that goes on with that.
All right, let's talk about the vaults and crafting. So it seems to be right now, I'm not sure they're working exactly the way they're supposed to, in that you can craft an item and it goes back to your, you can take the items from your company vault, but it goes back to your personal vault. Any ideas there?
So withdrawal permissions. You could, if that could happen to you, you could have just pulled it out of your bank and crafted it from your personal vault anyway, because you had withdrawal permissions. It's not ideal. We're looking at a way to make it more obvious where you want to send things, but as a first pass for a feature that people have been desperately wanting for a long time, it's pretty good. Just be careful when you're crafting your company vault if you have full withdrawal permissions to remember to put stuff back in, and then hopefully relatively soon we'll be able to give you the ability to, even if you have withdrawal permissions, say I always want to craft back in the company vault.
So what you're saying is, like, if I've got craft permissions but not withdrawal, then it will go automatically back.
So that's actually right now, as far as I know. If you have crafting permission but not withdrawal, if you use the company vault, it should automatically go back to the company vault.
Yeah, there's just a problem with that. That when you discard, everything goes into your personal bank.
Oh, that's weird. I had not heard about that. You should definitely bug it. I don't think anybody knew that was going on.
I bugged it twice. And then how about the bank tabs? Can we get those back?
Possibly. The bank is more Torque and Lee, so I will bring it up to them.
And then the other question around banking, is there going to be a way that we can just take something from the bank and throw it on the auction house? Like a direct connection?
Can you not already?
You have to actually pull it out and then take it over to the auction house and list it.
Oh, you used to be able to pull it directly from your bank, didn't you?
Not from the company vaults, is what I'm saying.
Oh, no, gotcha. Yeah, I don't know about that. That seems like functionality that would be relatively low-hanging fruit if you guys ask for it on the Crowd14 forum.
And I think actually people rather have the tabs and the sorting first, which I'm with that. How about buy orders on the auction house? Any thoughts?
I would love to get buy orders in the auction house. So sort of for our own internal record-keeping purchases and smoothing the discovery of prices, I think previous transaction history is perhaps a little bit more important, but I would be willing to convince the buy orders are more important. Both are sort of really important, and hopefully we'll get to them very, very soon, but I have no idea what the timeline is.
When the transaction history comes in, are we going to be able to get those logs too?
So it depends on how it's implemented. I suspect that we will try to give you local numbers and something that is more of an average, because I liked how they did it in the City Heroes consignment house, except that when transactions were turning over very quickly, you could lose sight of what's going on. So providing an average for a certain window of time is, to my mind, really important, but we'll see what everybody else thinks when that actually gets closer to going online.
Well, yeah, the other thing that people were trying to get is logs for the company banks, especially since that way we know who took what or dropped off what.
We definitely intend to have logs for the company banks. It's just it was not easy, and so it was not immediate.
Any thoughts about the holdings and outposts doing crafting, or is that just never going to happen?
I believe there is a plan to have certain types of crafting in certain types of outposts, or certain types of holding, rather. I don't think the outposts have it anymore, but there is definitely crafting on some of the upgrade paths. So I would suspect that would be on the second cycle of holdings outposts once we get some of the more finicky upgrades that Torch's planned out.
And the other one was inns, being able to craft, and the things that were supposed to be there in the inns that were purchased.
I don't know about crafting. I know we've talked frequently about having inns and taverns have the ability to set up a limited auction house that can hold like consumables and stuff, but I don't know where we are on that.
Okay. Well, with that, I've run out of questions, but Stephen, any last comments for the group? And then I'm going to open it up to the group, and if you want to stick around for a minute, they've been known to ask some interesting questions.
All right, I do not have any comments. Other than that, in 10 minutes, programmers will be here banging on the windows with my sandwich, asking me to run Kingmaker. So make your questions quick.
All right, well, I'll open it to the group. Thank you all. This has been a Pathfinder University Keepside chat. Next week, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have Mark, the CTO, the tech behind the tech. So open it up to the room.
I have a quick question for you. What module are you on in Kingmaker?
We are so close to done, I can taste it.
Nice. Kingmaker, would that give you all a lot of influence for the game? It seems like there's a lot of Kingmaker sort of in the design concept of the game, and you can even see it when Torque talked about, there are going to be different roles for the settlements, and that seems like it came right out of Kingmaker.
Yeah, absolutely. Kingmaker was a huge influence, and the more expanded campaign, ultimate campaign system that came out of it, that came out as a hardback a couple of years ago. Yeah, so Torque has played all the way through Kingmaker as a player. I ran the first module for my group 5 years ago at this point, and whenever it first came out. And then, like I said, we're almost done with Module 6 with the programmers internally. And yeah, not only is it set in the River Kingdoms, if very, very far east, there are a lot of settlement management systems that have found their way in some form into Pathfinder Online.
I think Tink had a question for you there in Mumble Chat.
Oh man, I have to listen and read. Yeah, so I mean, it's hard to tell with the melee ranges. Like, I don't know if I ever got feedback on whether increasing the range forgiveness helped a lot, helped a little. Yeah, it's just how much of it can we stopgap by increasing the range, and how much of it really needs to come down to we need to get the server synchronization better, so there aren't these disconnects between where you think you are and where the server thinks you are. But like I said, we're cycling on it a lot and trying to figure it out. It's just I don't know if a stopgap really improves things too much, since we already did one of those. I'm not sure it actually fixed things too much.
From what Tink said there, it didn't help them out, and it didn't help us out either. And we actually, at TIA, we did a bunch of try to do some formation training, and we realized that where we're at on each other's screen is very, very far away on other people's screens.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that increasing it as a stopgap to anything less than you're actually shooting things at range may mean that we're not solving the real problem, which is fixing the synchronization of where the server thinks you are.
Another question I had for you is enchanting. Have you guys got that anywhere near ready, or in type of form?
Enchanting is fully designed out and in the database and ready to go just as soon as we get Paul a couple weeks to work on it. It's just, you guys want holdings.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's just there's a constant trade-off of new tech. It's what is most desirable, what is going to have the most bang for the most players, and we're running our programmers ragged, trying to get as much tech as possible. And some things get scheduled later that we would love to have right now, but because there's a million things that we'd love to have right now, and hopefully you'll bear with us as we program all of the things.
That's a great question. Do you actually get to sleep?
The programmers not so much. I mean, there are certainly days where we come in and Richter is the last one here and he is the first one here because he has never gone away.
Now, you said for the enchanting. Oh, sorry, Kaylor has a question for you.
Sorry, who's doing what now?
Also has a question for you in the chat there.
Yeah, so Leiden Cloth, spell penalty is hopefully coming in really soon, which should drive arcane users back to Cloth. And light armor, we need to get some more mobility stuff in there, right? One of the things you're seeing is that the main balancing factor for heavy armor was the speed penalty, which people really, 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 really hated. So we took it out in alpha and have not come up with a really good further balancing feature for heavier armors. And hopefully we will come up with a wonderful silver bullet for that balances everything perfectly. We have some ideas, but all of them require tech. So it's going to be a little while longer that heavy armor is probably less balanced than it was supposed to be. Yeah.
Hunting in heavy armor is painful because obviously we can't carry much loot back.
True. And that is one of the things we put in to try to mitigate it somewhat.
Oh, it does a good deal of it.
A good question for you guys is, when is the critical system for combat coming into effect?
It is high on my list, but other things are higher. So soon, soon, not long, not super soon. That is the nearest I can give you to an estimate.
Fair enough. Now, I know that each armor has a critical defense value. Now, just wondering if the pluses change that at all?
No, they do not right now. As you may have noticed, we put in armor training recently, which was supposed to give you improved critical resistance, but then it turned out I actually don't have that as a effect I can hook up yet. So it's possible that some more things will gain improved critical resistance as time goes on. But no, the pluses do not influence critical resistance. Pluses in general are only meant to influence things based on keyword. So unless it's on a feat, the pluses aren't really supposed to influence it much. So what I need to do is be able to put improve critical resistance on a feat.
Speaking of keywords, has there been any internal discussions about how gaining like half a second on short duration buffs feels really, really weak for the
Yeah, so
investment
I actually have a plan to increase the effects of effect power pretty dramatically. It's just it's somewhere in there on the list of combat improvements. It is not as high as some of the other things I have mentioned, but it's in there. 10% was a starting number. It didn't feel as good as I expected it to, so I'm looking at changing a lot of things about that whenever we get some serious combat time and all the other lower hanging fruit and more important fruit is dealt with.
Have you guys thought about splitting up some of the effects a little bit more, like having a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 version? Like, for instance, you have Quickened and Haste.
Yeah, so I saw that asked today on the forums, and each new effect we add is more tech and more, even perhaps more importantly, more synonyms I have to pull out of the thesaurus, which has already been cut pretty far to the bone on certain things. So the thing was, they were never really intended to be different tiers of effects. Because the way the math works, for people with similar numbers, a plus 30 should always be just as good. Plus 30 when you're closely matched against somebody at tier 1 should mean about the same thing it does when you're closely matched at tier 3. That's possibly not as true as I'd expect it to be, and I do lots of thinking about that, but I don't see that changing in the near term.
How are you guys going to fix the E-Power versus E-Pro situation right now?
Yes, that's fixed in E7. It is actually working on our internal stuff right now. It is very nice to have it back.
Oh, very awesome.
From what I understood, one of the things about E-Defense was that it lowers a major effect down to a minor. Is that actually the case, or is that just something I heard somewhere?
So crowd controls are supposed to, when they've been reduced by 30%, either from margin of failure or effect protection, or a combination of the two, they're supposed to step down. So basically, knockdown and stun are supposed to become immobilized and not interrupt you, and interrupt is supposed to just not do anything. That is towards the top of the list of stuff that is being looked at this sprint, but I don't know if we're going to get it. But if not this sprint, hopefully soon.
Other questions before his sandwich comes?
And I have programmers sitting outside with a sandwich and a horrible hankering to play Kingmaker, so I will field one more really, really good question.
Why is Zombie Kitten Mountain still called the Northern Cragthorns and not Zombie Kitten Mountain?
Everybody knows it's called Zombie Kitten Mountain. Internally, we know it. You know it. We know it. Everybody knows it. Do you need a little piece of text on a map to let you know it?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Enjoy Kingmaker. We appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, everybody.